and welcome to Learn Live. I'm Becca and I work in the Education and Engagement team at UK Parliament, so it's my job to teach people just like you how Parliament works and encourage them to get involved and get their voice heard.
My name is Ed Howell. I'm a Senior Committee Assistant for the Work and Pensions Select Committee in the House of Commons.
So today, our focus in Learn Live is going to be on select committees, which are perhaps a not very well understood aspect of parliamentary business. But select committees allow Parliament to take a really detailed look at policy and legislation put forward by the government. So we're going to start today by watching a short video about how select committees work, and we're then going to be asking our expert, Ed, some questions all about select committees. So enjoy the video and we will see you very shortly.
Government departments have an impact on every aspect of our lives, but they do not have free rein to do as they please. They have to justify their policies to Parliament and in particular the select committees. Each committee has the job of scrutinising the work of a particular department of government. A select committee is made up of around 11 or so members of Parliament drawn from all political parties. These politicians combine their efforts to pick apart and examine every area of work carried out by the department they are scrutinising. They do this by deciding what inquiries they should hold and calling for written evidence from the public. The committee then takes evidence from all sorts of different experts from across public life. They then use the information they have gathered to question ministers and secretaries of state. You can watch all this activity and read every word spoken online. You may not know this, but anyone can submit evidence to a select committee inquiry, not just academics or think tanks. Committees use lots of methods to gather evidence from as wide an audience as possible, and committees often take themselves around the country or even around the world to see the evidence for themselves. Once enough evidence has been gathered, a committee will publish a detailed report full of recommendations for the government to act on. The government then have 2 months to respond to Parliament. But this is just the start of the story. The Select Committee report often initiates further action and campaigning by pressure groups, charities and the media. This can often be the first step in a countrywide political debate affecting the future of the country.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed the video. So it's time to hear from our expert now. We're going to be asking Ed some questions all about the role of select committees and how they work. So we're going to start with a nice easy one, Ed. Could you tell us what a select committee is?
Sure. So a select committee scrutinises or checks up on the work of the department that they follow.
So by department, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So there's lots of departments, government departments that are there to help to run the country. The Prime Minister can't do it all by themselves, so they rely on the help from their departments to help out with particular aspects of the country. So, for example, the Education Department help to run education in the country. The Health and Social Care, or the Department for Health and Social Care help to run health and social care in the country. And then the committee that I work for, the Work and Pensions Committee, they follow the work of the Department for Work and Pensions.
Okay, so these government departments put forward ideas for policies and legislation, and then it's up to the select committees to scrutinise those policies and check up on them.
Yep, that's one of their roles.
Great. So, are there select committees in the House of Commons and the House of Lords?
Yes, they're in both houses. So in the House of Commons, there's pretty much a select committee for each department that there is in government, so roughly about 20 or so. And then in the House of Lords, they have 5 permanent committees who look at broad themes rather than particular departments. So, for example, the Economic Affairs Committee in the House of Lords, and then I think they also have a Science and Technology Committee in the House of Lords as well. And then also in the House of Lords, they can set up ad hoc committees to look at particular issues. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I think there was a Social Care Select Committee in the House of Lords. They did their inquiry, they produced their report, and then the committee was disbanded after that.
Okay, so there's like 5 ongoing ones in the House of Lords, and they can set up shorter ones whenever they want to as well. Okay, cool. So how are MPs and peers selected or chosen to be on a select committee?
If you want to be on a select committee as an MP, you can put your name forward, and the parties can choose what they want to be on the committees after that. Sometimes the party can run an internal election, so MPs of a particular party can say they want to be on that committee. They'll hold their own internal election, and then the winners from that will be put forward by those parties.
Okay, so when you get onto these committees, is there someone that's, say, in charge, like a lead MP or a lead lord that's in charge of the committee?
Yeah, sure. So they're called chairs, and they're essentially the driving force behind the committee's work. They're making sure that the committee is doing the best work that is possible and hearing the evidence from the right people.
Okay, so in the video we just saw with the U shape that the members sit in, where does the chair sit within that U?
So the chair sits at the top of the U shape, and that's why they're there, because they're kind of the focal point of the committee.
Okay, excellent. And we know how the members are chosen to be on committees, but how is the chair chosen to be on the select committee?
Good question. So after a general election, the Speaker of the House of Commons, so that's Lindsay Hoyle, he'll draw up a list of which select committees are going to be chaired by a member from which particular party. So the idea behind this is that it reflects the result of the previous general election.
Oh.
So in the previous general election, the Conservatives won, and so therefore currently the select committees that we have in the House of Commons, the majority of them are chaired by a Conservative member. So once that list is available to everybody, then people know if they're in a particular party, they can run to be a chair of a particular committee.
So by run, does that mean that the House, all of them, elect who gets to be on the chair of the select committee?
Exactly, yeah. So once you've worked out whether you can be a chair of a particular committee or not, you just have to put your name forward, and all MPs in the House of Commons, it doesn't matter whenever it comes to the chair, all MPs in the House of Commons get to vote for who chairs each select committee.
Okay, so it's a very democratic process. So maybe you can tell us now a little bit about your job as a senior committee assistant.
Yeah, sure. So as a senior committee assistant, it's essentially my role to make sure that all the administration for the committee is done properly. So that's such things as booking rooms, making sure members receive their papers on time in the run up to particular meetings, and essentially just helping members out if they have any issues as well.
Okay, so are you the only person that assists the Work and Pensions Committee, the MPs in that, or are there other people that help out the committee too?
No, not at all. So each select committee will have a group of staff that help to assist them with their work. The manager of that staff is called a clerk. There might sometimes be one or two or possibly three clerks, depending on which committee it is. And then there'll be other people who help to look into or help to research on various bits of policy that committee will be following. And then usually there's one or two committee assistants like me as well.
Okay, so a lot of people behind the scenes helping the committee do its job. So now we've covered a lot of that background, can you tell us how a select committee inquiry works?
Sure. So briefly, a select committee will decide what they want to inquire on and hold an inquiry on that particular topic. Usually they'll set out the terms of reference for which they want the general and wider public to give written evidence to them on. Once they've gone through all the pieces of written evidence, they might then choose who they want to hear from orally. So they'll invite particular witnesses to come in and give oral evidence on that topic based on what they said on their written evidence. And then following the oral evidence sessions, the committee then goes away and writes up its report on that topic and suggests various recommendations that they think the government should be changing about that topic. And then once they've produced their report on that and published that, the government then have 60 days to respond and say what they think about the committee's recommendations.
Okay, excellent. So you work for the Work and Pensions Committee, so maybe you can tell us what they're working on at the moment.
Sure. So there's two big inquiries that they're doing at the minute. One that they released before Easter was on universal credit and the 5-week wait that it takes for somebody who's wanting to claim universal credit from completing their application to then receiving the first payment for their universal credit. And then the second inquiry that they're doing at the minute is the Department for Work and Pensions response to the coronavirus outbreak.
Okay, so two happening at the moment. What kind of people are often asked to come and give evidence to a select committee to contribute to the inquiry?
Anybody really. It can be somebody who has particular experience of a particular topic themselves. It can be maybe organisations that work in the area, charities that have a particular interest in the topic that they're discussing as well, and then often government ministers or people who work for the department will come and talk to the committee as well.
Okay, so does that mean that sometimes celebrities are asked to come and give evidence?
Yeah, that has been known to take place. So whenever I worked for the Health and Social Care Committee and they were doing an inquiry onto childhood obesity, we had Jamie Oliver and Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, the two celebrity chefs, come and give evidence to the committee to tell them all about what they found as chefs and what they had found in the programmes that they had done on that subject.
Okay, cool. So, do select committees then tend to reflect what's sort of going on in current affairs in wider society?
Yeah, that is usually the case. So at the minute, obviously with the coronavirus outbreak happening, a lot of the select committees are asking the departments that they follow what they're doing to try and help the general population through this tough time. But then also they don't just focus on exactly what's happening at the time, they might also take a more kind of longer term approach to things as well. So they'll try and fit in another few other inquiries around that work too.
Okay, so do the government have to do what the select committee recommends? So they've written the report, they've given it to the government, they've said this is what you should do. Do the government then have to do that?
No, the government aren't compelled by the select committees to do what they want to. It's up to the government as to how they want to run those departments and those policies.
Okay, so do the government have to get back to the committee at all and say, oh yes, we've received that recommendation, or what's the procedure on that?
Yeah, so once a report is finished, then and it's published, the government then have 2 months, usually about 2 months, give or take a couple of days here and there, to then respond to the committee and say what they make of their recommendations, i.e. we like this recommendation, we're going to put it into policy in the future, or we don't like this recommendation and here's the reasons why we can't do that.
Okay, so they have to respond but they don't have to act on it then. So at the moment, how are select committees doing their job?
So you mean in the times of coronavirus right now?
Yeah.
Yep, sure. So obviously with social distancing, it makes it very difficult to invite people into one room and then hear all of the evidence. So it's been a time of trial and error for the committee office in the House of Commons. And so we're having to kind of learn on the job and do virtual meetings rather than meetings in a particular area. So far, I think they've gone pretty well. Unfortunately, it means not as many committee meetings could happen as before because there's just not that bandwidth or that kind of that option to do as many meetings as there were before. But each committee at the minute is meeting every other week, whereas before that maybe they met every week. Now they're meeting every other week, and these meetings are taking place online. So they were able to invite witnesses onto a conference call and then hear evidence that way.
Okay, so the government is still able to be scrutinised by select committees then, so that's good news. So speaking of scrutiny, are select committees the only form of scrutiny that take place in Parliament?
No, so yeah, there's other forms of scrutiny. Probably the most famous one is Prime Minister's Questions, that happens every Wednesday at about noon. And then other departmental questions that take place throughout the parliamentary week as well. So there's the oral questions that happen in the chamber, those are them. There's also written questions, so MPs are allowed to write, I think it's up to about 20 written questions each day. They can do that and they can make sure that the government is answering their questions on any particular topic that they choose. Also, scrutiny can take the form of legislative scrutiny, so whenever the government is trying to get a law through Parliament, MPs have the chance to scrutinise it and make amendments to it and make sure that it's what they want. And then also there's other forms of scrutiny such as debates. So an adjournment debate, for example, is a chance for an MP to raise local issues and get a response from the government on what those local issues are.
Okay, so select committees are just one of many different types of scrutiny that take place in Parliament. So some of the people watching this might be studying government and politics, and one of the things you have to consider in that course is how effective select committees are at scrutinising. So are you maybe able to give us some of the arguments for and against that? So maybe we could start with why someone might think a select committee is not such a good way of scrutinising.
Yeah, okay. So why is a select committee not as effective as it could be? Well, as I was mentioning earlier, the government don't have to introduce the recommendations that the select committee says in its report. It's up to the government how they want to run a particular policy. So that's one reason why maybe select committees aren't as effective as they could be. Another one is that they can't compel people to come and give evidence. People who come and give evidence to a select committee do so on their own accord. So they don't really have the powers to summon witnesses who want to come and give evidence. But then flipping that on its head, why are they a good thing? Well, they often highlight a particular area that the mainstream media isn't focusing on. So they have the opportunity to open up debates around particular issues. And then also maybe if a recommendation isn't agreed straight away by the government, it might take a couple of months and then the government might change its mind on a particular thing. So again, whenever I worked for the Health and Social Care Committee and they were looking into childhood obesity, one of the recommendations was that a sugar tax was implemented on sugary drinks. I believe at the time the government didn't think that was such a good idea, but then about a year or so later, they then said, oh, well, we now think this is a good idea, and that was a good way of trying to get childhood obesity levels down by introducing a sugar tax on sugary drinks. So eventually the committee got its way, just not immediately.
Okay, so select committees often start the conversation and then it's taken up a little bit later on.
Yeah.
Excellent. So this is our final question now. Ed, are any select committees calling for evidence at the moment?
Yep, sure. So always check select committees' websites to see if they're taking any evidence on any forthcoming inquiries. I believe at the minute the Transport Committee are doing an inquiry into new and novice drivers, and the Women and Equalities Committee, they are doing an inquiry into body image.
Okay, so I'm sure loads of you have some really interesting opinions and that you could share with the Select Committee as evidence. So with that in mind, we're now going to watch a very short video and we're going to finish with this, and it's going to give you all the tools that you need to submit evidence to a Select Committee. And if there's anything else you'd like to learn about UK Parliament, just check out the resources page on our website for all sorts of fun games and activities that you can play at home. So thank you so much for watching today. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
At Parliament, we have lots of grand old rituals and official language. People generally love it, but it can scare others off a bit, which is a problem when Parliament is so keen to engage directly with the rest of the country. Select committees are especially keen to hear from as wide an audience as possible when they're investigating government performance. Many people think we are only ever after the views of grand academics and heads of business, but the more varied people we have taking part, the better informed we will be. Even if you have just a small amount of knowledge or experience in something a committee is investigating, you can contact them direct. We call this collecting evidence, but that sounds like a lot of law courts and oath swearing, so think of it more as calling for your experiences, your thoughts, your views. Don't worry too much about our guidelines advising people who want to send in lengthy documents. You only need to write as much as you want, and you can just cover one tiny part of the overall inquiry. It's small details that make all the difference to our understanding. We do have pretty small staffs for each committee, so we do still need to hear from you in writing. But it only needs to be readable. It doesn't have to be a formal paper or anything.
Sometimes we ask for your comments via social media or at special events.
If you have special educational requirements, then of course give the committee a call and we can explain other ways of contributing. You should soon see your contribution put up on our web pages, and you can follow the inquiry and watch a small number of people being invited to come and speak in public at Parliament. We call these people witnesses, but please don't think they're compelled to come in. They are more often people who have sent us particularly interesting submissions and who we want to share ideas with. Towards the end of an inquiry, you will see the evidence we have gathered from you becoming the basis of the much tougher questions we then put to people who are in positions of power. And if we have had enough contributions, we can be sure that we are asking the right questions.